and learn how to jam like a star.
Need a laugh? Check out the Funny How Comedy Podcast, which focuses on upbeat conversations with legendary comedians. It's free on Spreaker and iTunes. Check us out on Facebook at Funny How Comedy Podcast, on Twitter at Funny How Podcast, on Instagram at Funny How Comedy Podcast, or email us at funnyhowcomedypodcast@gmail.com.
Hi, this is Derek Sherinian. You're listening to Dave and Dave Unchained.
Pick up the new book, Eruption, Conversations with Eddie Van Halen, by Brad Tolinski and Chris Gill. These music journalists share with fans new and old alike a candid, compulsively readable, and definitive oral history of the most influential rock guitarist since Jimi Hendrix. It is based on more than 50 hours of unreleased interviews they recorded with Eddie Van Halen over the years, most of them conducted at the legendary 5150 Studios at Ed's home in Los Angeles. The heart of Eruption is drawn from these intimate and wide-ranging talks, as well as conversations with family, friends, and colleagues. In addition to discussing his greatest triumphs as a groundbreaking musician, including an unprecedented dive into Van Halen's masterpiece 1984, the book also takes an unflinching look at Edward's early struggles as a young Dutch immigrant unable to speak the English language, which resulted in lifelong issues with social anxiety and substance abuse. Eruption, Conversations with Eddie Van Halen, also examines his brilliance as an investor who changed the face of guitar manufacturing. Eruption, Conversations with Eddie Van Halen. Get your copy today on Amazon.com.
If you would like to send us a letter asking a question or making a statement or whatever you'd like to say, you can send it to ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com.
Mailbag. Check out the new podcast, The Rock Quarry, your place to hear in-depth interviews with some of rock's most colorful characters, with your host, entertainment journalist David J. Criblay. The Rock Quarry is available for free on Spreaker and iTunes. You can check us out on Facebook at The Rock Quarry Podcast, on Twitter at Rock Quarry Pod, on Instagram at The Rock Quarry Podcast, or email us at therockquarrypodcast@gmail.com.
What we do, it's rock and roll, but it comes from the heart, you know? It's really a soulful kind of thing. I mean, it's our lives, you know? We play music. It's all we do. It's like, we'll be on the road for 10 months and come home and go, I need a break. After a week and a half, Al and I are calling each other going, come on, man, we got to play. Because it's the only thing we know how to do, or the only thing we like to do. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really the root of it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have an incredible guest this evening. He is a world-renowned rock journalist. You have read his articles for years and years through so many different magazines that we all grew up with, including Rolling Stone, Guitar World, Classic Rock, Mojo, Circus, Cream, Us Magazine, too many to mention. It is rock journalist Steve Rosen. Steve, thanks for coming on.
Hey, guys. Thank you for having me.
We are absolutely thrilled for you to be here.
Nice, man. Listen, I want to tell your listeners before we get going here how many times I had put you off and you kept coming back at me. And I wanted you to know that all those times there was no malice behind declining your offers. I wanted to wait until I really had something worthwhile to talk about, and I now have something worthwhile to talk about.
Yes, we're very excited about that. What Steve is referring to is, so let me just set this up a little bit. So Steve has interviewed Eddie and other members of the band multiple times through the years, and I just wanted to start off, before we get into the big reveal here, Steve, you had a unique relationship with Eddie Van Halen, and I wanted to start off, how and when did you first meet Eddie?
So I was going to the whiskey that night. I can't remember the date, but it's 77. So it's like, months before the first album comes out. I think it was somewhere around April, May, June, somewhere in there. Cheap Trick was recording a live album at the whiskey. By 77, I had been writing for about 4 years. So I was on all these record label mailing lists. So I was invited, and I thought, wow. Yeah, go see Cheap Trick at the whiskey, recording a live record. Yeah, that'd be fucking great. So I was there that night with my brother, and the girl who booked the whiskey was a girl named Michelle Meyer. I knew Michelle because I had a band at the time, and she used to book me and the band into some of these other clubs where she was booking bands. So she had booked my band into a club called Madame Wong's West, which at the time was like kind of a punk club. The punk thing was happening. We weren't a punk band, but I owed Michelle big time. I mean, she didn't have to do that. And Michelle was plugged into everything in Hollywood. She was like this amazing, rock and roll yenta, man. I mean, she knew everything that was going on, all the good bands, all the good players. And so I was standing there downstairs, and she comes over and she says hello, and I said hi. She goes, listen, there's somebody upstairs I want you to meet. I go, yeah, of course, And so we go up the stairs. Upstairs at the Whiskey is where the dressing rooms were. And I go upstairs. She takes us into one of the dressing rooms, and there's nobody in there. So there's this guy standing there smoking a cigarette. And she walks over, and she goes, Eddie Van Halen, Steve Rosen, Eddie Van Halen. And, to be honest, I had heard of Van Halen. I mean, by 77 in Hollywood, you knew who Van Halen was. The strange thing was, I had never seen Van Halen up to that point. I just knew that there was this band, Van Halen. They had played the Whiskey, they played the Starwood. They were kind of a local band that had made good. On that level, I mean, I was jealous of the guy because, every band, wanted to play the Whiskey, wanted to play the Starwood. I mean, that was about as good as you could get being kind of a local band. So that's the night I met Ed, and I walked over, and we said hello. And I don't know what it was, man. And I'm not like this, spiritual or was in the stars or destiny. I don't believe in that kind of stuff, really. But there was some kind of connection. I don't know what it was, but he was just an incredibly cool guy. He liked all the same stuff I did. I was talking to him about Purple. Again, not knowing anything about his playing, so I never heard this guy play. We talked about Cream, we talked about Jeff Beck. He was there to see Cheap Trick. He was a huge Cheap Trick and the Rick Nielsen fan. That's kind of where it began. And at the end of the night, I guess we talked for about 25 minutes or so, half hour. And by the end of the conversation, he said, hey, hold on, wait a minute, man. He ran out of the room, and I thought, where'd he go? I mean, what's he doing?
Right.
And he came back, and he had a pencil or a pen or something. He goes, hey, man, here's my phone number, man. You should call me or something, or I'll call you. It was weird. It was like a perfect first date, where you can't say anything wrong, and there's no awkward moments. I mean, I really liked the guy. By then, he had already signed the deal with Warner's. So we were talking about that. And I think I knew that as well. Yeah, it wasn't just a local band playing the Whiskey that, this guy in this band had signed to Warner Brothers Records. And I thought, sight unseen, I thought, if the guy's got a deal on Warner's, I mean, it has to be a good band. Right. But, I remember talking to him about the deal, and he goes, yeah, man, it's, we made a good record, and I hope people like it. And, I mean, he was so low key about it. I just could not believe the guy. I almost thought it was a kind of false modesty, where it's like what he was really saying is, we're the best fucking band on the planet, and but I'm not going to tell you that. I'm going to make it seem like we're just a decent band. So anyway, that was the first time that I met Ed. What began a 26-year relationship.
That's incredible. And so tell me, when did you do your first assignment with Ed?
So February 78, the first Van Halen record comes out. I remember receiving that. I was on Warner Brothers mailing list, and Warner Brothers would mail out the monthly records, So they had, so many bands. I mean, they had records coming out every month. So I remember getting the releases. I guess it would have been February. And I remember there was a Little Feat record in there, a couple other records. And then I remember seeing, this record by Van Halen. I thought, oh, shit. So I'm looking at the record and the cover, and I'm looking and go, oh my God, that's Eddie. There's that guy, This is probably going to cause ire in your fans and make them pull out pitchforks and, light torches and come after me. But I put the record on, and I did not think it was anything special.
Really? How come?
I don't know, man. I've tried to figure that out. I think what it was is, I was really of the classic rock era. I mean, my heroes at that time were Jeff Beck and Page, The Who, Blackmore, Paul Kossoff, Robin Trower, Frampton with Pie. I mean, that's the stuff that I love.
Sure.
And so I guess I heard the record and I thought, yeah, I mean, he's good. It sounds like, Deep Purple kind of sped up. And, I kind of heard, kind of Ritchie Blackmore chops in there a little bit. Not really, but, tonally. And that was my first impression. I think I didn't want to let go of the past, I didn't want to believe that there was like this modern kid who was that good, that could and would be replacing all my heroes. Maybe that was part of it.
Yeah.
The next day I sat down, I thought, there's got to be something else here, because every single writer I talked to, every person I talked to said, this guy is the best guitar player they've ever heard,
Yeah.
So I sat down the next day, and the next day I got it.
Okay.
I was able to listen to it, with a more unbiased ear. And
Gotcha.
Oh, Jesus, God, is this guy really that good?
Sure.
And then I realized, my God, yeah, that was the guy I was talking to. This guy was so fucking low-key, and he was that good. I just couldn't put the two together, how this guy could be so low-key about his own playing. So, yeah, I was blown away along with everybody else. So in answer to your question, Dave, I actually interviewed Ed the first time. It was the end of 77. I think it was November, December. This is before the first album came out. I was writing for a Japanese magazine at the time called Player. By then, they were huge in Japan. So it was for Player.
Okay.
So then the record comes out, and then the next time I met Ed was the Day on the Green, Oakland. I think it was like June 78. Van Halen is like second on the bill. AC/DC opened. Foreigner were headlining. I was actually there to interview Foreigner for Guitar Player magazine. Okay. My friend and your listeners probably know Neil Slozauer. And, Neil took all those cover photos of Ed and did all those amazing shots of Ed. Would go on to do those incredible books. I ran into Neil there. Neil said, hey, man, I'm shooting Ed. You want to come meet him? Neil didn't know that I had met him at the Whiskey. So I went backstage and saw Ed for the second time. And it's weird. And this would happen over and over. I don't know if Ed remembered meeting me at the Whiskey. It's hard to recall, but I don't think he did. And those kinds of things would happen. Ed would forget something that we did or talked about a week after it happened. It was a strange thing. So anyway, I saw him for that second time at the Day on the Green. And in fact, I didn't even have a chance to see the band play because somebody from AC/DC's A&R people or manager or something asked if I wanted to interview AC/DC. I've never been an AC/DC fan. They just never did anything. But I thought, hell yeah, of course I'll interview AC/DC.
Sure.
So anyway, I was backstage kind of interviewing AC/DC after they came off stage.
Yep.
And in the background, it's funny, I could hear on my cassette Van Halen playing. So I never saw them on the Day on the Green.
Right.
I think I did see them at a show somewhere between that first night I met him and that first phoner because I was asking him questions which indicated that I had seen the band. I knew about the Bombshell.
Right.
I think I'd asked him about Strat. So I must have seen them somewhere along the way, even though I know this is weird. I cannot remember seeing them.
Well, it's been a while and many years, right? So you
only,
can't remember everything.
So how many? So what is that? 47 years or something? Yeah, only 47 years or 46, whatever it is. Yeah.
So it's a long time. Hey,
Long time.
Steve, I wanted to ask you. So when you would interview Ed, was there anything special or different you had to do to prepare for the interview, or was there anything that was different about actually interviewing him than other musicians that you interviewed along the way?
Yes, there was. And it wasn't so much in what I talked to him about, though that was certainly part of it. It was more in how I prepared myself for that interview. With every other musician, and I've had friendships with musicians. I mean, I knew Billy Gibbons. I'd interviewed Billy a bunch of times, so when I interviewed him, it was this barely friendly kind of conversation. But I wasn't really friends with him. I'd maybe see him once a year when the band toured. I knew him only through the interviews. Steve Lukather, I knew Steve pretty well. He lived sort of around the corner from me. So when I would get together with Steve, I mean, that was a pretty friendly kind of an interview. But Ed was something entirely different because Ed and I became friends seemingly overnight. I mean, it just seemed to happen so quickly. And he was still living in Pasadena, but he would drive out to my house all the time. I mean, he would just drive out and not even call. He would just show up. I don't know what it was, man. We just became really close really quickly. So when I was interviewing him, I had to be really aware, and it was not an easy thing to do, of just sitting there kind of talking to him about guitars versus talking to him about guitars in an interview style and making sure that I was, covering the stuff that the magazine wanted and sort of just posturing myself as this journalist and not just a friend talking to him, because I'd be asking him questions and that'd be stuff that we had talked about and I knew the answers. So it was like this redundancy, this weird thing that would go on. We would just talk about during the course of a conversation that I wasn't recording. And then I'd have to kind of turn the cassette player on and put the microphone in front of him and ask him those same